Well, the first wise ass comment I'd have on it, you've got electrons going through space, and there's no semiconductor materials involved. It's kind of hard to beat a vacuum, for purity, which is an interesting way to look at it. But generally speaking, they are more linear than most of the solid-state devices. In a given application, they have more headroom. They have a wider signal excursion, keeping the distortion components simpler than solid-state. And that's an intellectual point of view about it. But nevertheless, I don't really know to what extent those intellectual characteristics are really involved. I have a good long-term friend whose idea about audio are pretty out there, but one of the things that he used to say that I bought into is simply that these circuits pass the information of the sound through them in a way that is absolutely unrelated to the intellectual aspects that you can measure so far. They pass the vibe, if you will, in a way, and tubes do it more effectively and convincingly than solid-state circuits. And that's all I can say. I don't know the answer, I just know what I hear, and I go with that, and that's why we make these circuits this way, with those tubes. And I know that was something that was a little hard for you to accept at the point when we decided that we would make an amplifier that had a tube input stage.
Yeah, because there are many fine solid-state amplifiers and preamplifiers in the market. You've designed a number of them.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think one could easily say your heart's with tubes.
I would say that. Yeah, it is. It's been for a long time. I was fortunate when I started to get my college education that they were right in the change point from solid state to tube. So I got a good background in both of them as far as the theory. And I've kept fooling with tubes from that point on. I mean, I was doing it before I went to school. So it's been a long number of tubes that have gone down the path there with me. I love one of my favorite tubes was 845s, a big power triode that had a 100-watt plate dissipation. And I remember my mentor, Gordon Mercer, he had a cutting amplifier that he cut records with in this hi-fi store that he mentored me in, and I never forget that amplifier. And so another mentor, Mac Turner, commissioned me to make him a pair of 845 amplifiers, and I did. And I used the Gordon circuit and added some feedback around it, and I ended up by having those amplifiers to use, and it turned out that I turned Arnold Nudell onto these tubes, this amplifier that I owned, and we ended up by introducing the Infinity IRS loudspeaker with those tubes driving the mid-range tweeter panels. And you should have seen some of the people screaming and squawking. Oh, God, well, you can't have that stuff there. We need to have stuff that people know about. And here are these big tubes with thoriated tungsten filaments that are like yellow, glowing, and boy, I was just proud of the peacock. It was so great. That was definitely a halcyon moment for that introduction by that speaker, and it was great. So those are my favorites, and like a dummy, I sold those amps. Because I had ideas how to make them better that I just didn't do, But guess what? I've got a BHK signature amp. I'm very, very happy with listening to those.